Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first lecture. And since you have a prior idea what are mainly the things that we are going to talk about, no? Since you have already read the excerpt, you've read the journal article, no, about language, and it doesn't go somewhere, your ideas don't go somewhere because you already have a gist of what is it that we are going to tackle. Okay? Now, you are enrolled in this course, English 110 or 110, depending on how you pronounce it, no? And how you read it. Language of non-literary text. Okay? So basically, before we involve to those types of texts, no, we need to understand what language really is. That's the first step. Okay? What language is and how language is used and how useful language is on our daily lives, which basically what the excerpt is telling you, or based on what you read, it's the main idea there. Okay? Maog yun ang iyang pasabot. The usefulness of language, depending on how you use it, and language is basically free for us to use. No matter who you are and what you are in this world, language is still a necessary tool for us to communicate. Okay? Just like what we are doing today, I am communicating, I am discussing, using the language, using the English language, and using a multilingual approach, no? Just for you to understand the concepts. Okay? Now, for you to formally introduce the course, I would like to introduce also the course outcomes. Okay? The first, at the end of this semester, no? Expected yun nga ma-achieve ninyo, you will be able to demonstrate a critical understanding of stylistic theories, concepts, and principles as applied to non-literary texts. And second, apply knowledge, skills and understanding of the language of non-literary texts through written discourse. So the product that we are anticipating here is about written output, okay? And let us not just assume that we are here to learn, but also to do activities interactively, no? So that learning will really remain in your brains, no? So that you will remember the importance of our course in the long run. Okay? Now, to move forward, we are going to discuss at this very session, no, the module 1, or the first module entitled Language, Literature, and Non-Literary Texts. Okay? As you can see, we do not automatically define literary texts, no? But we need to define the predecessor of it, such as language. Okay? Dili mahimo nga dili nato istoryahan si language. Before that, no? That's the prerequisite, so to say, before we can proceed to study literature and non-literary texts. And we can sort of differentiate those two concepts. But first, language ang naita. Okay? If we have course outcomes or the goals that we want to achieve in this course that you are enrolled, we have also module learning outcomes, specifically sa module 1. Okay? Number 1, you will be able to, or you should be able to, discuss the nature of language, literature, and non-literary texts. Okay? Now, you don't have any idea, if you don't have any idea how to master the language, especially the non-literary text, no? Don't worry, this is your, you are in the right place, no? In other words, because I will be dealing with the simplistic manners of explaining the things that you need to learn and not showing you the complicated topics. Okay? One step at a time lang ta. Second, identify the similarities, differences, and relationships of language. Of course, you need to have a strong contrast of the ideas sa languages, sa relationships ng languages, and sa literature, so that you can proceed to differentiating and mastering the non-literary texts. Okay? Third one, recognize the importance. That's the effective part of it. The importance of the review of the concepts of language, the related theories, no? We need also to appreciate those as the contributors of the existing concepts. Okay? Literature and non-literary texts. These all you need to achieve, and you will surely 100% achieve by the end of this module. Okay? So, I hope these are very clear to you. And the lesson 1 is all about language. I know it's somehow redundant sa inyo ha, because sir, nagbasa na migtaas kayo nga paragraph. We've already read a lengthy paragraph that talks about language, but still, we need to crystallize your ideas and your knowledge about language. Okay? First and foremost, I would like to tell you, frankly, that language is the only means to communicate. Okay? No other means to communicate, because we are the highest forms of animals. We are capable of speaking. If there is no way to speak, such factors exist like non-verbal communications. Okay? Written communications whatsoever. Part of language. We use language as a tool, and it is often described by linguists na ang language daw, it is the common denominator of one's culture. Okay? So, I expect every one of you to be absorbent of the topics, no? Since you are all English language majors, no? I want you all to master this so that you can be absolutely deadly when it comes to your profession. And you are articulate enough, no? Because words, I believe, and ideas can still change the world. Okay? Language is one of the main reasons why we are successful as a society today, even in our individual lives. Because we communicate well, we can communicate and articulate well, we can mean well. Okay? So, it involves talking, of course, the alphabets, of course, the letters, the vocabulary, types of words that you want to choose and you want to use in a specific communication act. Okay? And the conversation, the speech styles, and whatnot. All parts of language. Now, language isn't the thing that you want to avoid of and you want to avoid from sa complicated nga situations, especially when you are dealing with your individual challenges and problems, no? You need to communicate well, even sa other people, or most importantly sa imong self. Okay? You use language. We use non-verbal communications, and we use self-dialogues or monologues, so to say. Right? Pag-solve sa atong kagalingon problem, even if we reflect on a daily basis. Okay? Language is very important, not just for the reconstruction of the society, not just for the development of society, but for the understanding of us all. Dili gyud ta mabuhi o wala ta magkasinabot diri through language. Okay? You cannot enroll in this course if your instructor doesn't know how to speak, doesn't know how to communicate, and as human beings, I expect also as in return, no, that you can also communicate well, if not 100% perfectly. At least I expect that you can communicate to me the way that I communicated to you. Okay? The language is the ultimate tool, according to linguists, no? The ultimate tool to express anything. Anything. There's no such thing as limitations sa pag-express nimo, because naturally language flows, or language lets the ideas flow, okay, on a two-way process, whether it be you are expecting a corrective or positive feedback, no? The channels of communications are involved. As far as the non-literary texts are involved, which will be discussed on the next module, those kinds of things, ang pakana gyud ana or ang way gyud ana is, again, language. Okay. To move forward, class, the lesson outcomes, if we have module outcomes, na gi-expect na ako sa inyo ha, no? We have also specific learning objectives. Educators call it ILO, or intended learning outcomes. Okay? Sa specific yun nga lesson 1, which is all about lesson 1, all about language. Again, all about language. That's the first lesson. And the learning outcomes of that is you should be able to describe the nature of language. That's very easy, no? Because you know for a fact that that you can describe now the nature of language, or the cause and effect of language, no? What are the important features of language and the usefulness of language? Because when we say nature, it primarily entails the causes and the effects. Okay? Number 2, distinguish the different functions of language. You have to differentiate at the end of this lesson. Okay? You should differentiate the different functions of language. Kung ang language ba pang-communicate na gyud sa uyab, pang-communicate na gyud sa imong seatmate, no? Or is it for a holistic purpose? Or is it for a purpose that is to make a societal impact? Okay? Or language ba gyud para ba gyud sa written or spoken? It depends. Okay? So language should be mastered by you, and the way to master that is to differentiate the functions of language. Okay? Kaya i-differentiate so far? Yes or no? Kaya ka? Okay? Sige. Now, let's proceed to the third one. You should be able to discuss the functions of language by sharing concrete, real-life examples. Of course, one way of simplifying things is to give example. Okay? Educators know this full well, that I think the right term for this is corrective assessment. Yes, corrective assessment. Nakabantay ka mo sa teachers when they discuss something and mag-provide sila examples hantod sa makuha ng estudyante. Okay? That's called corrective assessment, no? So that you can easily discern what the teacher or the instructor is talking about. Okay? For you to master the concept, you need to provide concrete examples. Concrete means real-life example to be applied outside world, outside of this classroom, I mean. Okay? Because learning is useless without application. Okay? I am sure that you can agree with that 100%. Okay, kuha sa learning outcomes. Let's proceed now. I would like to show you the lesson map, no? The map of lesson 1. This is how we should structure our minds, no? And how we should approach the lesson. An introduction, language of non-literary, no? Introduce na siya, but first we need to define language first. Sige. The nature of language, as I said, the functions of language. Sa pagbasa pa ninyo daan sa paragraph, I think you already have an idea, no? On how to differentiate language. Tama? And then we also are sure, no? If not 100%, I am sure that you can tell the differences of the written and spoken texts. Okay? And how important are those in our daily lives. Okay? Now, it is important to ask a philosophical question about this course, regarding this course. What is language? Okay? It's a common question in which I am certain that you can provide an answer to it. Okay? since you already have the answers at the back of your mind, because I let you read the paragraph, no? That was supposedly the engaged part of our module, but I let you, read that excerpt for you to have a background knowledge and for you not to waste time contemplating about what I'm saying here. Okay? Let's just assume that you already know what language is. It's the one that I'm using right now to be able to be understood by all of you. Okay? And language is the bridge of understanding. It is the bridge to understanding, and without language, we cannot articulate well. We are not understood by others. Okay? So that language that we are referring to, it doesn't mean nga English lang siya, no? But we also have Bisaya, Filipino, no? And all other dialects nga nag-exist, Ilocano, Cebuano, Kapampangan, all other languages, okay, is related, all other languages, are related to what we are talking here. Such as the importance of those languages. Okay? Again, you can answer this one by just contemplating or by just referring to what you have read. Okay? Gets? Okay, very good. Now, to answer such question, no, referring to the textbook or to the module itself, there are these scholars nga naga-define, they have these differences regarding sa ilang definitions about language. First, according to Joseph Greenberg, is the presentation visible? Is the text visible? Okay, very good. That means to say that you can read what Joseph Greenberg is saying. Please read it for me. Language is a system of signals which constitute its grammar.
It is a set of culturally transmitted behavior
Patterns shared by a group of individuals. So it is a system of signals, no? The system of signals that Greenberg is referring to are the rules of a language. Okay? So we cannot just provide language because of the reason that we should provide language, but we should provide language according to the systems surrounding it or governed by the specific language. Okay? Now, the rules which constitute its grammar are very important. You cannot just omit the single grammatical rule, even the subject-verb agreement, no, nga rule. You cannot just omit that for the sake of communication. Na ang importante maka-communicate lang yun ko without looking the technicalities of language. Okay? Now, to look at this in a further view, no, in a wider view, I mean, it is a set of culturally transmitted behavior, patterns shared by a group of individuals. It is not only the technicalities that you should look according to Greenberg also, but you also need to know the cultural preferences and reasons behind the language. Okay? Now, the transmitted behavior, okay, the transmitted behavior and the cultural influences are important, class. Okay? Because culture and language, again, as I said earlier, are interrelated and are inseparable. Okay? Ang kultura nato sa Pilipinas, okay, we are very known of our hospitality. That's one. And kanang panghagad nato sa kaon. Kana, no? That's our culture, and our culture involves the language that we use. Oy, kaon ta diri, mga on. Okay? That's the kind of language that we use, but it is mainly influenced, that kind of behavior nga panghagad lang, it is influenced by our language. Okay? Now, if you notice, dili siya common sa other countries, no? It is common only in the Philippines. Okay? Agree? Okay, it's very common sa ato and then masipog pag yun na first attempt. Di ba? Sipog pa taan na, sige ra. And then second attempt, ngaon ba, dali ba? Sige ra lagi. O niya, ikatulo kay ginuhuyo na magagplato. Sige ra lagi. Okay ra. Asa inyong kanon? Labi nag-fiesta, no? Labi nag na occasions and birthdays and all. Relate? Relate? Okay. Insay asay diri Mga asay. Okay, nakuha si Uncle Joseph Greenberg. Kuha? Okay, very good. Questions before we proceed? None? Okay, sige. Language is speech. Dahil sabi isa ka uncle na to. Charles Fries. Gigutom na ko ba? Charles Fries. Language is speech. Speech is language. Okay? Now, there is this one idea way back when I was studying linguistics, no? In my first year as an educator. I remember those linguists referring to language as primarily vocal. Primarily vocal in the sense that the written outputs, okay, the written literary texts are just the representation of the spoken language. Nag-unag yun ang spoken language kay historically speaking way back thousands of years ago, no? Dili pa uso ang sulat. Okay? Mas naimbento ang pagstorya pag-una. Okay? Cuneiform, again, if I'm not mistaken, if my brain doesn't fail me, cuneiform is the first writing system of Mesopotamia. The very first Mesopotamia ba? Naka-remember mo? Okay. It's, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first written system of, writing system, of Mesopotamia. Or the first civilized place. Okay? Now, the writing systems were invented after na naging istoryahay ang mga tao. Okay? So there was already speech going on. There was already vocal representation of language going on before the writing systems. Kay ang mga tao sa una, they prefer to tell stories which is really relevant sa Greek sides, no? The Greeks gods and goddesses, no? They are familiar and they are very fond of telling stories, and as telling you that, no, it serves as an evidence that language is primarily vocal or speech. Okay? It's not really the written language that dominates before, no, since the beginning of communication, but according to Charles Fries, ni agree siya atong idea that language is speech, good. Mostly speech. One can identify if that person is good at his or her language through how he or she speaks. Okay, ma-identify yun na to. That's one thing. Because, for example, if there is a guest speaker there, no, sa isa ka event, sa quadrangle, for example, and the background of that speaker says that he is a major in English, master of English language, and a doctor of education, major in English language, but by the time that he speaks, gahi kayo siya mo English. What will be the thinking of yours? Diba? Automatically, diba? As Filipinos, besides of our nature, no? To judge automatically, no? There's an immediate response ato nga, wait, dili lagi evident sa iyang sinultihan, no? Dili lagi evident. Is that true? Diba? Relatable enough, no? Maminaw ka ng mga tao diya sa kilid, and then they will eventually judge you. And that's normal, of course, that's normal. But what I'm trying to tell you here is that the vocal representation or the speech style of a person really matters the most. Okay? That's what really matters the most. And the written record, as I said, no? Again, is but a secondary representation of the language. Well said, Mr. Fries. And I think that you all agree, no? based on the examples that I have given you, ma-judge dayon nato ang tao based on how he speaks. And this concurs the idea of Charles Price that language is speech or primarily speech. Nagunag yun ang speech. Ikaduha lang or secondary lang daw ang written language. Okay? Let's move forward kang Uncle John Ollier or Oller, no? Language has two elements according to his. One is cognitive or active, which comprises the linguistic features of the language. So what he means by this is that a language has its systems, no? Has its governing rules. For example, not to mention the grammar, okay? The sets of rules. You cannot just say that you is beautiful, for example. You is beautiful, okay? It sounds really absurd, right? It sounds incorrect based on what we know and the norm that we are used to when it comes to speaking a certain language, especially the English language. But, of course, we are aware of the grammatical structures, and that's what John Ollier is referring to. Okay? Language has two elements. We should consider the two elements. First is the structures or linguistic features that we should be differentiating. Okay? And the other is emotive or affective. It has something to do with our emotional attachment to the language that we are speaking. Okay? And language now, what that means is it can affect or it can express our emotions. Right? Those poets in the Renaissance period or Renaissance period, William Shakespeare, I guess, would agree on this. And other prominent writers would agree on this because writing, dili pod na basta-basta. Okay, aside from the fact that it is only the secondary representation of language, writing pod, diha pod ka maka-express og tarong. No? Nahapoy mga tao nga hinay gyud sa speaking. Correct? Hinay sa speaking, and Howard Gardner would agree on that because we are unique in our own learning styles. We are unique in how we express something. And naapoy mga tao nga hinay lagi sa speaking pero adto pud mo excel, no? They will excel sa written. Okay? And maybe sa kinesthetic, sa mathematical skills, and other kinds of intelligences, no? And again, sa affective sides ng language can also be an affective factor. What that means is when you say something bad or something offensive to the receiver, no? Automatically the affective domain of that person will be affected, no? Or maybe it gets even to the extent that mag-breakdown yun, no? Sa mga masasakit na salita na binitawan. Okay? And it's normal because according to this guy, to Mr. John Ollier, no? Language is both affective and emotive, and effective, and at the same time, we should also consider the technicalities of the language. Okay? Dili ra if mo refer ka nga, okay nga makasakit kong tao, at least I am using the correct grammar. Okay? I am using the correct grammar. It is okay for me to hurt other people, regardless of what I say, regardless of what I utter. No, it doesn't work like that, okay? You need to consider the two factors, no? John Ollier said. Sabtan? Okay. Further questions? Wala na? Okay, let's proceed. Now, in deepening our ideas sa atong discussion tonight, no? Naapod another scholar nga nag-ingon, meaning does not reside in the words per se, but in the context of the situation. What that means is, not everything that we say has a literal meaning. Okay? If I remember using euphemisms, no? Euphemisms, are those words that you substitute sa offensive words. Okay? Because we have this one, this is actually, I don't know if it's an offensive story or a ridiculous story. No? A ridiculous story. I don't know if how you will find this. But we have this former classmate before sa education. I think it was only, it was just last year because estudyante pa man ko last year. I was very, it was very funny because my seatmate told the classmate of ours nga, I don't want to name drop. I don't want to name drop, okay? Because we are recorded, please guys, no? Ano na lang, Tarpulano. Wala kay lingaw. Yan. Manut brush ta. Manut brush ta because that guy's breath really stinks. Yes, for God's sake, no? Gabi gyud kabaho, as in, that's the truth, no? And the katong bahog ba wala pud siya maka-notice nga mao na di ang pasabot, di ba? And the language used there is not direct, no? It's not a direct language or it's not a direct vocal speech, but it means something, no? If your seatmate tonight will tell you that you should buy an Axe spray or deodorant, then maybe it means something. Okay? And maybe it means something because language, again, or meaning of the language that you are saying does not reside in the words. Okay? But in the context of what you are saying. Per se, per se means itself or yes, itself. And the words itself, but it can be used again as themselves because the speaker refers to plural here. Okay? Words. Meaning does not reside in the words themselves, but in the context of the situation. Okay? Sabtan? Okay, so if na ay mga idioms diha nga gipang speak sa inyong seatmate or sa inyong friends, sa inyong family, no? Better understand the context of what that person is saying because it might mean something. Okay? So according to unsa man na oy? According to Bronislaw Malinowski. Sorry, I have an astigmatism. Now we are done, no? Discussing the definitions of language according to some scholars. Okay? And those I think are boiled down, no, summarized and scrutinized by the module makers, that those definitions or opinions about languages are the ones that really matter the most. Okay? Daghan pa kayo na sila mga tao, even you have your own opinion about language, but kadto lang yun sila ang pinaka-importante. Okay? Sabtan ang lingwahe? Sabtan? Okay. Understood? Okay, very good. We go now to the definitions of language. Okay? Sige ka sabtan nag-define ng language. Sir, kabalo na lagi tao unsay language. But what I want you to have is a crystallized view of language. Okay? Kanang maskin asa ka pangutan-on ba? Maskin nagkaon na kag-isaw diha. What is language mo ng tindera? Language is ana dayon ka. Okay? That's okay? Testing kay ana gyud lubaon kag barbecue stick sa ano. Ka OA pod nimo ay. Okay? Follows a rule governed system, of course. Na ako'y friend to or chika sa takadali Na ako'y friend nga English major pod and he uses English language to the extent even sa daily lives good kanang maskin. Yes, wala I think he lacks sociological competence, no? He has the discourse competence, he has the grammatical competence because that was a good student, no? That was a good English student. And what he lacks is the social linguistic competence or how to deal pragmatic situations, no? Maskin sa tiyanggihan, ginoo ko nag-English. No? Pragmatics suggests man good, a part of linguistics, no? Branch of linguistics, I mean. Pragmatics suggests that you should use language according to its own. Oh, kawirdo lang yun nila, no? Mga naman. They can just pass through. And going back, pragmatics again is the study of language use. Okay? Pragmatics deals with the study of language context. Okay? Based on how you use language. Okay? Naapod tayo gitawag nga pragmatics function sa linguistics namo. And what it basically means is that language is used depending on the situation. Depending on the situation. That's why, have you noticed sa movies, no? If you watch every movie or many movies in your life, no? And you notice their ungrammatical subtitles, di ba? Wala, ungrammatical ito. Sa Messenger, sa Facebook posts, you don't need to be perfectly linguistically competent, no? For the different channels that I mentioned, because there is what we call pragmatics. It is okay to apply descriptive grammar onto different areas where you use language. Nasabtan pa ko ninyo? Okay ka? Okay. Or the pace is just too fast. Sakto ka? Sakto lang? Okay. Very good. Now, ang akong friend kasi English na unsa pa ni naprangkahan bitaw siya istorya sa cashier sa Jollibee. Kay we were having a lunch at 2 p.m. na to, late na. And then English siya kay wala siya kaangay daw kay wala siya katagay ketchup. Ano ba? Balik yun yung cashier na, can I talk to your manager? Nagana na siya dito. Ginoo ko. And kanapit ang moment nga mo ana ka nga, that's not my friend, really. Gawas na lang ka. I don't know that guy. Ana lang ka ba? And that's the feeling I was having, no? Di na ako nakaila, sir. Sorry kayo. But what I did, no, was to yes, katawanan yun kayo kay kasipog kaulaw biya na. Kaulaw biya ng ingana. And then ang cashier po nagpunga-punga po dito tubagong English. Makatubag pong cashier. And I was amazed by that, no. And then ang problema lang sa katong akong friend kay OA gyud siya kaayo. Okay? OA gyud siya kaayo. And the rules that he was using were appropriate. Okay? Appropriate, okay. But he lacks the knowledge of language context. Okay? That's why it is important for us to use the rules governed or the governed rules by the language, especially sa English. It is important for us to be aware, but also we need to be aware of the pragmatic competence that we are having. Okay? We must practice language accordingly. Okay? We use language accordingly. Dili kay bisag asa ka magpatakag in English. Okay? Again, follow a rule-governed system, but to the extent that you don't need it every day. Depende lang sa sitwasyon. Okay? Follows a rule-governed system. It means not only the grammatical rules, but the pragmatic rules of the language. Okay? Second, definition of language. It is a set of symbols, words, based on individual preference, or may it be visual or spoken. Visual means written, no? And spoken means tagsulti nimo, okay? In most basic sense. It is a set of symbols and words because again, language does not only entail words, okay? It entails words with meaning behind. Okay? Pakas katong gaina nga akong example. Relate man to kamo tanan no. Nga if you have this classmate of yours that will if you have this friend of yours, if ever lang no, nga mo ana siya nga, have you ever visited a dentist? Mo ana siya. And then you know automatically what it means, di ba? Because language is not mainly just words. Okay? It entails symbols. that mean or that could mean something else. Okay? Gets? Okay. Now, it may be spoken, it may be written, no? Depending on the speaker. Okay? Depending on the language provider. Okay? Now, the third one is the definition of language is that it carries their customary or traditional meanings. As I said, no? Sa atong culture, nag-entail pud na og klase-klase nga linguistic meaning. Okay? According to our own culture. Okay? Dili pasabot nga nag-exist ang atong po at opo dinhi, nag-exist pud na dito as a form of respect sa other nations, other countries. No. It is culture-based. Okay? And also, the behaviors are culture-based. Not only the behaviors are culture-based, but also the languages themselves. Okay? Now, class, the last definition of language is that it is utilized for communication. No other thing apart from this one. No other thing more important than this one. Okay? No other purpose that is more efficient than this one. It is a means of communication. Okay? I remember one idiom by Mr. Fulgarinas. You're familiar with that? Si Sir J. Mark. Okay, katong sabaan sa Facebook.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Sir J. Mark. Hi, sir. And I remember when I was just a student, way back 2018, he said to me an illogical thing about language, and I cannot forget this. He said that language is a tool for communication, and it is like a hammer for a carpenter building a house. Okay? It is the language that it is the hammer, I mean, that represents the language. And how can you be able to build a certain house without your hammer? And that house represents the community. You cannot build, you cannot express, hindi ka makadukdok if walay language. Between you, the carpenter, and the thing that you're trying to build, it requires language for you to communicate. Okay? So that makes sense, right? Because language, again, is the way to communicate. It's, I think, the ultimate way to communicate. Not just speaking, but other forms of languages and other types of languages. Sabtan. Okay? Sige? Questions? None so far? Clarifications? Idiomatic expressions? Wala? Wala na. The four main functions of languages according to Michael Halliday. Okay, please take note of these. According to Halliday, no, the function of language, one of the functions of languages, or a language, is ideational. It is used for ideational purposes. And what that means is that an experience of the speaker or the writer comes from the real or imaginary world. Whatever that person or that speaker is saying, no, it comes from the real or imaginary world that he or she is referring to. Okay? It could be a thing, no? It could be a laptop. It could be something. It could be a person. It could be someone. Okay? From real, when you say imaginary and real, I think it's very, these two are very basic for you, no? You can at least differentiate the differences, and these are very self-explanatory. But the ideational thing here that we are referring to, according to Halliday, is that whatever we say comes from our own idea. Okay? And that's the main point there. Sabtan? Okay ka? Ang discussion? Are you okay or are you hungry? Hungry na? Makaamungay mo ng barbecue diya, good? Kusog kayong aso? Mukhang nasunog ng projector. Aso di ay nas ano? Aso di ay nasa barbecue. Masking gisipon ko, I can still smell na ang taba, gibali-bali na, ang chicken skin. Tapos na ay kalami kayong sauce diha, ay halang-halang. And second one, the interpersonal function. Okay? Language isn't just for the mere purposes of expressing something. Okay? It is not just for communication, but also for interpersonal function. And what that means is to have an interpersonal relationship or socio-cultural relationship to your peers, neighbors, school, and even to our community. Okay? And we have to accept the fact that language involves the skills that you have, and you must use those skills to achieve interpersonal relationships. Okay? You cannot just ask someone, and let's say, I often use this in my philosophy class sa senior high school. I often use this that for you to analyze philosophy really well, you need to ask questions. You need to ask questions because it is the only way for you to contemplate about things. To ask questions, and eventually you will get the ultimate answer that you are looking for. No? Whether it be in life, whether it be for something else, no? But in using questions, just be careful because you will use logical way of reasoning or systematic language, so to speak. Okay? Same with dealing with interpersonal skill. Okay? The usefulness of language depends on how you use it well in dealing with your interpersonal relationship with others, of course, because intra means self, right? And inter means towards others. Now, to ask questions in relation to that, no, you have asking questions is one of the way to unpack your interpersonal skill. For example, you're lost somewhere, no? Let's say in Gaisano Mall, and you just want to ask where you want to be, no? And where are the directions way back home. And that way you are communicating to other person. Okay? To ask questions is one of the fundamental ways that you can do to unpack your skill again sa interpersonal na function of language. Okay? Again, language is not meant to be kept, but language is meant to be expressed not just for yourself, but for others. Okay? It is important for us to understand also the saying, gas-gas na kayo nga saying, that man cannot live alone, no? No man is an island. Okay? That's the exact quotation. That's why we need language to reciprocate our relationships with others. Okay? Nakuha ang interpersonal. For interpersonal function, no? That's one of the functions of language. Textual, of course. Na-discuss na ito kagaina. Whether it is vocal or written, no? One of the purposes or functions of languages are for textual purposes. Okay? It is for textual approaches and it is for textual functions. Good. Okay. For example, one of the things that instructors or professors require you students to do is to pass a written activity, written output, for example. And that includes or that belongs to a textual function of language. Okay? That's one example. Developmental, of course. Language is one way of developing yourself. You can use language for developmental purposes. Okay? You cannot just use language for communication and there's no product afterwards. Okay? But in achieving your improvement, in improving yourselves, class, you need language. You need to ask what you're lacking. You need to ask something for someone, from someone, I mean. What you need, you ask even, let's say, transcendentally, no? When you pray, you ask something, you use language. Na ay meme sa Facebook na nakatawag yun ko, and at the same time, I am guilty for laughing for it, no? Laughing about it. Ana siya nga, nag-ampo man to siya, nag-ana, and then sa birthday ba, and that, Lord, you are nothing without me. Ana siya. Ana ko nga, imagine yun, no? Without having knowledge sa grammar, no? It could mean something else yun. No, and it might divert the ultimate meaning. No? Imagine going to hell daw because of grammar. And that's very hilarious for me. And at the same time, nagilty pod ko kay nganong katawa man ko. And you can use language to develop, no? That means to say, you shall not use incorrect languages, no? You should not use languages that are meant for offensive purpose, no? But we must use, sometimes offensive purposes are included for that person na mahigmatag yun, no? You need to offend someone because there's no euphemistic way to do that. But it's the last option, okay? But the developmental thing here is you use language to simply develop, whether it be yourself or other things. Okay? Samtan. Okay, very good. Questions so far for the four main functions of language? Wala? Sure? Clarifications about ideational, interpersonal? Okay. If you have confusions, I guess you can just rewatch the video, okay, of how I explain something here. Okay? That ends our slide, but I will show you something else na continuation katong giingon ako kagaina na I will continue the lesson because I just made this PowerPoint kagaina lang, and last part na gyud ni class, just wait for a while. Yes, there. General functions of language, actually, the ideas are generalized, no? Of what we have discussed. Maklaro siya? Ako kay di ka klaro. Gamay kayo, no? Sige, wait sa. Kana. Okay lang? Wait lang ha. Oh my God. Sorry. Kana. Kaya na? How about that? Okay. The function of language, one is instrumental. Okay. Getting things done, satisfying material needs. Okay. Literally, we can use language for satisfying our material needs. Okay. What we mean is the literal meaning of it. What we say has the literal meaning of it. Okay? One example is accommodating and entertaining guests and visitors. No? We often say what we mean. No? Dali mo, kaon mo. Gimin yun nato ng pakanon sila. But if we have rude visitors, sometimes we don't mean that. Okay? We don't mean that. Pwede mo uli na kao? So, we have rude visitors before sa fiesta. No? And nagdali-dali gyud siya nagdali gyud siya ayo og plato mas kinuha ko agaampo, no? Wala pay prayer ana siya nga kadugay mga on. Di kaayo baga, no? And then one another bullet, no? Discussing items in the brochure with tourists, guests, no? Direct to the point yun ang ginamin sa instrumental, using language as an instrument, I mean, and getting things done, satisfying material needs, no? Asking or giving directions on how to cope with academic problems with learners. As I said, you can ask questions by using the language that you are comfortable in using. Okay? And you can ask directions to me, to your classmates, no? You can just ask something for clarifications. Okay? With academic, especially those that have to cope with academic problems. And explaining the employment requirements with applicants. Wala na yung mga pasikot-sikot pa pag na ay mga requirements na gusto nimo i-show sa mga applicants, no? You will immediately direct your language, no? Without any embellishments. Dili na ka mo magpasikot-sikot pa dito sa posters na to me as a human person, our company needs magana-ana ka, dili na pwede, okay? Language as an instrument needs direct and concise expression. Okay? Direct and concise use of language. Okay? Explaining the employment requirements, mao na to gayna, giving and responding to orders for customers, clients, no? Kinsay online seller? Online seller?
Yes.
Kamo na lang duha, nagtuduluay man mo. Okay? For example, you are an online seller and there's this one customer na gusto mo check muna sa product, no, before purchasing it. Yes. Yung kasagaran, no? Sir, pwede malantaw sa sir ang back part ng motorcycle if motorcycle ang paliton, for example. Sir, pwede palantaw, sir. Sir, pwede pa-testing, sir. Videohi ko no, sir. Yang ending to, punto na effort, wala day gipalit. Okay? That's one struggle of entrepreneurs and businessmen or businesswomen, no? That's one struggle. And by accommodating your customers, if you are a seller, for example, let's say, you don't want any informal words and highfalutin words na imo i-chat, okay? Dili ka pwede magmuingon ka, for example, nga it is thy art for me to say and to comprehend the knowledge that I have for you. Ganaan ka dito mo nang customer ni mo na. I-block pa ka na ay high possibility that you will be blocked, no? Kay uwi ka kayo, okay? Direct to the point, dili na magpasikot-sikot, okay? Maupod ng mga education students pud nako, magpa-essay na gani ko. Back to back. Miss ko, wow. Anya ang thought kay gamay lang yun kayo, balik-balik lang. So, nga na ang technique, no? Para makonsume ang 1 hour. Okay? Nga na ang technique nila. And I don't know if some of you are like that here. I want you to practice, no? The direct expression of language. Okay? Say what you mean. Okay? But use euphemisms if needed, no? Use context clues if needed. Use contextual language if needed. Ayaw puding na ang imong katapan nga bahok agba directly because it might offend that person. Okay? As I said, use contextual languages. Okay? Next one, regulatory, influencing the behavior, no? One example of regulatory function is to giving house rules or regulations, no? It's about it's about making the language function itself. Okay? Language is a functional use, yun siya. And to regulate language, this is one of the example. Okay? One of the examples, I mean. Next one, asking and giving directions for food. It's the same, somehow the same. Again, preparations and services. Explaining steps or procedures from instructional manual or brochures, no? Showing instructions to the students for additional or remedial outputs. I remember when I was practice teaching, just a little chika na pod, no? I was in the field of practice teaching sa among OJT, no? And my cooperating teacher would always tell me that whenever you make an instruction, just be clear, yun. Okay? We are encouraged to use one sentence only, especially sa junior high school, yun. Dili na ka pwede magdaghan og words. You can't use, no, many words kay ma-overwhelm ang hunahuna ng bata. And there's a high tendency that that student will not understand the instructions or directions. Okay, so be clear as much as possible. Okay, illustrate. Kay sa akong classmate man good, ang iyang instruction kay nag-compose ng 3 compound sentences. Okay, so lengthy na kaayo siya. And I can't remember exactly, no, sa iyang giingon, but the point here is to use clear and brief languages. Okay? Next bullet, illustrating some tips or guidelines in prompting and selling products. Okay? So, nag-promote ka, dili na po magpadagandaghan of words, no? Dili na magpaganagana. Okay? Dili na overcomplicate ng language. Okay? So, that's still the point there. Okay? So, that's for regulatory function. Interactional, I guess, nakuha na ninyo, no? Let's just, again, read the function. Getting along with others to include or exclude. Mag-practice ka ng interpersonal skills mo. Okay? You need to use language directly. Okay? Since we are involving you to learn the non-literary texts, no? But first, you know the nature of language. Okay? Excuse me. Getting along with others to include or exclude, what that means, according to the examples given, accommodating and entertaining guests and visitors, balik na. Okay? Just say directly what you mean. Interaction, you want to interact with a clear purpose. Discussing items, brochure, balik-balik gihapon. Asking or giving directions, interactional purposes lamang siya. Dili siya regulatory. Okay? Explaining the employment requirements with applicants, dapat ang imong interactional approach is just and right, no? Without any other forms of improvement that are unnecessary. Okay? So, ang point ng interactional, I mean, is to have a healthy interactive moment with the one that you were talking to. Okay? With the audience, in other words. Next, heuristic. Seeking and learning. Using language to explore his or her environment. Okay? A way of learning about things. Na-discuss na nako ni Gaina. Of course, naanatay clear understanding about this one, no? When you want to learn about something, you would like to use or you must use language effectively. One way of doing that is to utilize language without any kinds of unnecessary embellishments. Okay? That will result man gud sa informal use of language. Pastong friend nako nga mag-English bisan na eh. And okay, one of the differing examples here. Seeing explanations and or demonstrations. You need to be direct also with that. Presenting updates and developments. Okay? Pag naga-present ka sa imong work, for example, sa development ng imong trabaho, you need to be direct. You don't want your boss to be frustrated, to be annoyed by your unnecessary words. Okay? Informing job applicants, the role of recruitment is the same as we've talked about earlier, but with different function, no? When you want to learn about things, just be direct. Okay? Presenting special services to the customers or clients. Okay? One example of heuristic. Imaginative function of language daw involves creating stories, no? When you are kanang nagmuni-muni mo somewhere. Okay? When you are contemplating about things, you often imagine scenarios in your head. And one way of imagining that is using language. Of course. No, nagagamit gyapon kang lingwahe. Okay? Nag-fantasize ka. No? When you're watching a movie, ganahan kay kas protagonist, and you fantasize that if I am placed If I'm placed in that situation, I would have killed the antagonist, no? I would have killed this antagonist in a certain way, no? Kung ako si Cardo, sus, dugay ako namatay. Inuo ko, no? So, creating stories, games, of course, it involves games, and new worlds, linguistic play, including poems, rhymes, and riddles, mga bugtong, no? Mga tula, for example, you use language. Okay? You use language for an imaginative purpose. Okay? An imaginative purpose in these kinds of senses. Okay? Sa pag-rhyming ng words, no? You use language, construct ka ng poem, for example, you want to rhyme, you want to achieve a specific rhyme scheme, no? You use language for that. Okay? And that's one of the existing functions of languages. Okay? Maski maghimo kag tula, you use language, but this time it is not direct, no? Kay daghan pa sikot-sikot. Yes, that's the word. Daghan kaayog mga directions, no? Not directly stated ang language. Okay? Discussing punchlines, di ba? No, sa may punchlines, for example, mga pick-up lines, kuno ba? Mga example ninyo sa pick-up lines, di ba? mga punchlines, no, dagan tayo naibawaan, but punchlines don't require direct language, no? And one example of that is katong mga corny kaayo ng mga punchline, no? Star ka ba? Wala lang. Ana. Discussing punchlines, slogans, propaganda with tourists and guests. Okay? Sabtan class. Okay, sabtan ka. Very good. That's the same example. Representational. Okay? We use now, according to Holiday, language to represent something. Okay? Communicating information, conveying a message with specific reference to the processes. Okay? Persons, objects, abstractions, qualities, states, and relations of the real world. Because often we use language, no, directly. We often use language in a concise manner so that the audience that we are referring to or talking to makasabot lang og dali. They can understand easily, but to represent language entails a different form of exercise. Okay? That involves communication of our information and our qualities, abstractions, meaning we tend to make things abstract, no? Instead, mag-direct to the point. We use abstract analogical thinking. And this is very common in explaining theories, no? Mga allegories, mga kasabihan, of course, it is included in there. Okay? Abstractions, qualities, states, and relations of the real world, no? We explain something, sometimes mag-relate pa kita, magpabati-bati pa ta. Okay? The only thing that we are just wanting to mean is the thing existing in the real world. Okay? The reality is, bahog ba imong tapad, daghan pa kag pasikot-sikot. Okay? You represent language in a different form rather than saying it normally. Okay? Or straightforwardly. Okay? And that's normal because that's one of the existing functions of language. Representational function. Okay? Now, this is the last part, I believe, of this module. No? Basahon lang nato ni and then we are done. And of course, we need to also understand it. Halliday further explains, okay, focus everyone, instrumental, regulatory, interactional, and personal language functions in this manner. Instrumental. Let's focus first on instrumental. This is when language is used to express one's needs. Okay, that's the... You might want to take note of this, no, or I allow you now to use your smartphones to capture. Okay? Let's use technology for a moment and take advantage of it. Sige, I will give you time. Mga 2 hours siguro. Pag-picture, okay ka. Sige. Okay, instrumental. This is when language is used to express one's needs. Example given sa atong kagay ng example, I believe, I want juice. It relates to our example. No? If you want something, no? If you want someone, for example, just tell him or her directly. You know ako. Dili kong mag-chat-chat pa ka nga. Nagkaon na ka, yes, that's one. Tapos, muana po nga, basig na'y masuko. Basig na'y masuko. No? No? I want juice, no? Directly say it, I want juice. Okay? If you know what that means, then congratulations, you wanted juice for a long time. Now, regulatory. Okay? This is where language is used to tell others what to do, to regulate language accordingly. Okay? Example, go away. Kung di na gyud kaya, you might want to use language directly, class. Okay? Dili. I think this example doesn't apply to marupoks.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, yes.
It doesn't apply to marupoks because they are very attached to the kind of relationship that is very toxic. Okay? Interactional, no? Go away. Ing na nga, go away kung wala kaganahi. Okay? Ing na, nga di na kaganahan. Okay? Go away. Go away. Okay?
This is so pretty fun.
Go away. Just tell directly. Okay? Next one. Asa naman to? Interactional. Here, language is used to make contact with others and form relationships. From the word itself, interactional. We interact to form relationships, even romantic relationships, no? Because in reality, it's how it works, no? We use language. Napatay mga banat sa messenger. Okay? To interact with our partner or our crushes, no? We use language. Okay? Interactional language to be specific. Okay? I like you. Okay? Charlton, Felisa. Okay? I like you. Charlton. And then, you need to interact genuinely. No? You might want to interact genuinely. Wala na dagan mga pick-up lines. No? If you want to mean something, just say directly. Because... But there's, I think, the downside of that, no? There's a disadvantage of that. Because when you say directly, walay thrill bitaw. And then, sometimes ma-intimidate ang imong ka-chat, imong ka-storya. Grabe naman po. Gustog mga kuan, mga... Yes, that's true. There are those people that want, dili ganahan ng diretso, no? Dili ganahan ng diretso. There are those people that are like that, no? There are those people sab nga mapulan. Kanang mga chat nga mapulan na wala na mo reply, mao na kay dugayan ka. Ana, no? Maybe that person, that receiver of the language, no, wants something immediately, no? Wants something to be told to him or her immediately, no? It depends again on the person or the receiver. That's why if you remember sa inyong purposive communication, no, we have these 5 considerations or channels of language of communication, no? 5 I think channels man yata to tawag, channels of communication, no? Yes, we have to consider the receiver, no? We have to consider the channel, the feedback, and all of those things. Okay? Next is personal. Please read. This is the use of language to express feelings, opinions, and individual identity. I am a good boy. Mga egocentric na mga statement, no? Sometimes language is used to a certain point where you are explaining or expressing yourself, no? I am a good boy. That's a fact, or that might be not a fact. Okay? And sometimes be careful that we be careful for using personal function sa language, kay some people will label you as narcissistic. Okay? And it's okay to use it without any forms of improvements, no, sa language. Direct lang gud gyapon. That's the main point here. He also explains heuristic, imaginative, and representational language functions as follows. Heuristic, this is when language is used to gain knowledge about the environment. Okay? Example, what is the tractor doing? Observational ang function ani. Okay? You want to perceive what's going on in your surroundings, in your environment. Okay? That's heuristic. And another thing, imaginative, here language is used to tell stories and jokes. Okay? And to create an imaginary environment. Okay? Which most of you are very capable of doing. Okay? Creating imaginary environment that doesn't exist at all. Yes. Fake and untrue scenarios. Okay? We all do that. We all do that. And as a human being, I am not afraid to tell you that we all do that. Okay? And ayo lang palabi kay basig makadto ka sa nearest hospital. Okay? Representational, last one. The use of convey facts and information. Okay? I believe that's understandable enough, no? To convey facts and information. That's to represent language in many different forms. Questions about the lesson 1 so far? Wala na? Okay. I guess we are done here. Thank you for your participation. I think the passage or the excerpt helps a lot sa inyong tagbasa kagaina, no? As a sort of prerequisite before actually stepping to the actual lesson, no? Because that was the main point of me discussing language, and it would be very hard for me to keep up with you if you don't understand language, what language really is, used contextually and used directly, emotionally, and used in many different aspects. Okay? So, thank you for your efforts in listening. My communication and language purposes did not go in vain. And I also appreciate each one of you. And you can have your dinners na. Thank you for coming. The session is over. That's for lecture 1. Goodbye and God bless. Goodbye. Pakipayong anay.